To answer these and other questions, we turn to the most important and most influential man in the Arab world, President Nasser himself, appearing on foreign television for the first time since the 1967 war. President Nasser, King Hussein of Jordan said in a speech in Washington recently that he was speaking with your personal authority when he offered Israel a 6-point settlement of the 1967 war. Do you wish to add to or elaborate upon the King's statement?
Well, it was said by the news agencies and the press that in the press club in New York, King Hussein said these points. But it was said that this was a new project for peaceful settlement between the Arabs and the Israelis. Well, I don't think that there is a new project for a settlement. There is only one project. This is the United Nations Security Council resolution of 1967. Of course, King Hussein and I have agreed about the implementation of this resolution. So there is nothing new. There is no new plan.
Well, I think I agree with you that King Hussein's points were precisely the same ones that you gave to Newsweek in February in a conversation like this one. And they are based, I believe, clearly on the resolution of the United Nations. King Hussein was more specific, it seems, on only one point. And that is the point, I think, that attracted the greatest interest in the United States. He said, or implied, that Israel would get freedom of navigation through the Suez Canal in any settlement of the war. Is that, in your view, a correct interpretation of the 1967 resolution and of your own 6 points?
Well, of course, according to the United Nations resolution, there are two main points. The first point was about the complete withdrawal of the Israeli armed forces from the occupied Arab territories. The second main point was the non-belligerency by all nations in the area, then the right of each country to live in peace, then the integrity of the countries in the Middle East. This was the main first point. The second main point was about the freedom of navigation on the water passages, then solving the refugee problem according to the United Nations and must be just solution. And the third point was about demilitarized zones and something like that. So there was nothing in the resolution specifically about the Suez Canal, but it is a package deal. You know, if Israel agrees about the implementation of all the points of the resolution, well, so they will have free passage in the Suez Canal. If they don't agree about the implementation of all the resolution, then there will be no peaceful settlement. The problem will continue.
Let me be sure I am understanding your point now. The United Nations resolution referred to, I think, freedom of navigation on international waterways. Do you consider that the Suez Canal is an international waterway and should be free to all nations, assuming, as you say, that a peaceful settlement was reached with Israel?
Yes.
The Israelis, in case of a peaceful settlement with the Arab governments, would then be on the same footing as all other nations when it came to using the Suez Canal.
You know, the problem between the Arabs and the Israeli is a problem going on for 20 years. I think many people in your country don't follow the reasons of the continuation of this problem for a long time. was talking now just to the audience and speaking about the war of 1948. Well, there was a war in 1948. Some people under the Israeli propaganda accuse us of beginning this war, which is not true. I saw that in many of the newspapers and magazines in the United States. In 1948, well, there was the partition. There was the Palestinian state and the Jewish state. Before naming the Jewish state, this was decided in the United Nations. And on 15th of May, Britain decided to leave Palestine. Before the 15th of May 1948, the Israelis attacked the Palestinian state. They occupied Jaffa, they occupied Akka, they occupied many territories of the so-called Palestinian state, which was really said by the United Nations. Well, this was the reason of the first war. The Arabs went on, of course, to secure the Palestinians and to help the Arabs in the Palestine state. What happened after that? There was the armistice agreement. But also there were United Nations resolutions by that time, after the war and during the war, that the refugees, the Palestinians who were expelled out of their country, return back and have compensation about the damages. Israel refused to implement this resolution. Then there was a resolution for a conciliation committee, and the Israelis agreed and the Arabs agreed to attend this conciliation committee. This was on 49. And we went there. The committee was formed from the United States, France, and Turkey. And still the committee until now in the United Nations. But after the first meeting, the Israelis refused to talk about the rehabilitation of the Arabs or the return of the Palestinians. This was the reason. We were insisting about the rights of the Arabs of Palestinians according to the United Nations resolutions. The Israeli refused, and that's why the problem continued for 20 years. From that time, the Suez Canal question continued also. Israel was not permitted to use the Suez Canal until they implement the United Nations resolution. They refused to implement the United Nations resolution. And so they were not permitted to use the Suez Canal until today. So the question is connected together.
How do you think that a settlement, you say that if a satisfactory settlement were reached with Israel, then they could be given a normal place in the life of the Middle East, is I think what you're saying. How do you propose that the settlement should be reached? What would you say of the Yaring mission, the mission of Dr. Gunnar Yaring, the United Nations envoy? Is that the way to go about it, or should there be negotiation?